Hey y'all, welcome to this week's show. As I usually say, we're going to talk about a couple of my favorite plants today, but in this case, that really is true. And it's interesting because things are a little kind of turned on their head, a little upside down. Under the edible plant of the week, the spring foraging plant from my spring foraging cookbook, it's going to be plantain. And if you listen to the show for any amount of time over the last 4 years plus now, we've talked about, well, we have talked about plantain a lot in regard to its medicinal values. Plantain is one of our most common weeds and our most medicinal herbs. It's just like, what are the two most common weeds that are medicinal herbs that are the most useful and most potent and most powerful? It's going to be plantain and dandelion. They're literally the two first herbs you learn starting out as an herbalist, plantain and dandelion. But today we're going to talk about a little bit of the medicinal properties, just kind of catch up, but mostly the edible properties of plantain, because it's also a very useful food plant. Then we're going to get into the edible properties of pawpaw. And as you know, pawpaw is one of my favorite fruits, and it grows wild in the mountains of North Carolina. It's something I've always got an eye out. It's got a really unique flower, beautiful flower. Kind of looks like the flower of wild ginger. It just sort of has this like alien purple fleshy look to the flower, right? And then it produces a fruit, which is somewhere between, in flavor, a papaya and a banana. And actually, in early America, it was considered to be a variety of papaya, but it's not. I don't know if the two are related in any way, but it is a unique fruit. It's Asmina. Yes, there are two varieties, Asmina trifoloba and parviflora. We're working on in my book the medicinal shrubs and woody vines. And so we're going to talk about parviflora, which just means it's a smaller pawpaw tree. It was also called custard apple. It is a very soft fruit, and while it was extremely popular in America up until probably the 1960s, I mean, just about every farm would have had a pawpaw tree, and every kid would have learned to identify them in the woods. And they even had little songs like picking up pawpaws, put them in your pocket. It was like a little nursery rhyme kids would sing. I mean, it was part of American life, really up until probably the 1960s, when people started buying all their fruit from the grocery stores, and fruit had to be shipped in from California or Mexico or, wherever it's coming from. And pawpaws just are not shelf stable. They will begin to soften, and you're never going to see a pawpaw on a grocery store shelf. Maybe at a farmer's market if you're really lucky, but definitely one to learn to identify so you can forage for it. I mean, that's how you're going to get pawpaws, unless you plant them. And you absolutely should. Even if you could probably put the small one, the Asmina parviflora, in a large container, like a big flower pot or a little raised bed that you could put on a patio even if you were in an apartment or a condo. I mean, it's not that big of a tree. It's like, one of those little lemon trees. I think there may even be some dwarf varieties. Check One Green World and Stark Brothers. I order from Stark Brothers quite a bit. Very, very fond of that company. There's another one in Tennessee that's really good, and the name is escaping me. It's one of the oldest orchards in Tennessee. Well, not orchards, nurseries. I mean, they specifically grow fruit trees, berry bushes, grapevines, and oh boy, that name is escaping me. Look for it. I'm sure you can use Google or whatever search, DuckDuckGo or whatever you use, and find it. They're fantastic. Their prices are great, and they're what are they in? Maybe the Chattanooga area? Or, no, maybe the Knoxville area, somewhere between Nashville and East Tennessee. They're really good, and I mean, I've never heard anything bad about the company. And I mean, a few years ago when I was shopping for pecan trees, wow! I mean, their prices and their service were just fantastic. They really were, and they've been around for, I mean, I think almost 200 years or so. So it's a family nursery, and oh, it's on the tip of my tongue. I wish I could do a search while I'm doing a podcast, but obviously I can't. All you'd hear is a bunch of clicking and me meandering through search results. So now, one quick note before we get into these two plants, I have a bit of an announcement, and I'm excited about this. It's a nice departure from kind of the things I normally do. I've written now, I guess, 15 books on herbal medicine, gardening, cookbooks, and religious books. Well, as most of y'all know, and well, you should know, because see, I've been a musician most of my life. I've been semi-pro. I've never, really been a headliner or anything, but pretty good. I used to be one of those guys that could fill in most any band. Fairly respected among fellow musicians. The tune you hear when my show's coming on, that's me playing guitar. It's an old tune called Windy and Warm. It was written, I picked this because it's like, a specifically North Carolina song, honestly. It was written by John D. Loudermilk. He was a songwriter from here in North Carolina. I believe he's from where was he from? The Chapel Hill area, maybe? I'm not sure. Ashwood. I cannot remember. Loudermilk's actually an Indian name. Sometimes it's not. But anyway, he was from North Carolina. It was made famous by Chet Atkins, obviously from Knoxville, Tennessee. I learned it from Doc Watson from Deep Gap, Boone, North Carolina. The biggest influence on me musically, I grew up following Doc Watson around. And when you hear me play Windy and Warm, that's totally live. I did it in one take, and it's my own version. I basically play it through about straight, like it's... Others have done it in the first, and then I go through it and I start adding all my little tricks to it. At the end of the show, when I'm doing the disclaimer, that's also me playing guitar, and that's over a composition by Jerry Reed called Windy and Warm, which is actually, no, not called Windy and Warm, I'm sorry, called Winter Walking, which is actually a variation of Windy and Warm. Essentially, they're the same song. They're the same chord progression with the kind of sort of the melody turned upside down for Winter Walking as opposed to Windy and Warm. And, if you only know Jerry Reed from his acting, like in, what was that movie with Burt Reynolds? Again, right on the tip of my tongue. All that's coming to mind is Cannonball Run, but that's not it. Yeah, Sally Fields was in it, and Jerry Reed plays. Well, anyway, he was the truck driver. And wow, Smokey and the Bandit. There you go, Smokey and the Bandit. If you only know him from his acting, you might think of him as kind of a goofy, almost kind of obnoxious kind of guy. The dude was freaking brilliant. He was really probably an IQ at least around 150. Very hyperactive. Very could be a little obsessive, and one of the best guitar players ever lived. I mean, literally, he was so good. Anyway, that's me playing music, and I just want to give a little plug for Jerry Reed, because I mean, his legacy's kind of being forgotten since he passed away, and it's a shame because he really was amazing. Anyway, the new project, I should say, is I'm writing an instructional book on how to play the mandolin. Now, I may do one on guitar at some point, but let's face it, the guitar market is, in terms of instruction, is ridiculously saturated. If you were to poll people in America who play a musical instrument, let's say a fretted instrument, what, 90% of them play guitar? I mean, just about every kid learns to play guitar. Strum a few chords and sing a song. Well, that used to be the way it is. I don't know how things are now with all this, electronic music where you just push a button and you get beats and all that crap. That's not music, in my opinion. Music is actually learning to play an instrument, learning to sing, rhythm plus melody, not just rhythm without a melody. I can rant on that. Anyway, I'm a pretty darn good mandolin player, almost as good as I am a guitar player, and I'm really good guitar player. Actually, I tend to be modest. I'm actually a really good mandolin player. I've been playing for 20 some years, almost 30 at this point. But I'm not happy with a lot of the instructional materials for mandolin that have been printed, say, post 1960. Mandolin used to be an instrument that was found in like everything from classical music to jazz. I mean, it was very popular in the late 1800s, early 1900s for parlor music and all that. Mandolin was one of the most popular instruments in the United States, far more popular than guitar. Well, along comes Bill Monroe and the Bluegrass Boys and blew everybody's mind. Everybody wanted to play bluegrass, and mandolin became almost exclusively associated with bluegrass. So I'm going to say 90% of mandolin instruction is bluegrass oriented, the rest being more probably Celtic music oriented. There's probably maybe 1 or 2% that is not bluegrass or Celtic music oriented. Of course, I love bluegrass and country music, but I'm really more of a jazz and blues kind of guy, honestly. Country, jazz, and blues. Those would be, and actually punk rock. I love punk rock, but that's a whole different thing. Anyway, I decided to put together this book that's going to teach mandolin the way I approach it, which is as any other instrument, not an instrument that's pigeonholed in bluegrass. So you could take this book and you could totally learn to play bluegrass or old time or Celtic or whatever. I'm teaching a little bit of music theory. I mean, I'm teaching almost like a jazz musician's approach to the mandolin, though you don't have to play jazz. We're going to go through lots of scales and modes and how to build chords. And honestly, I'm not going to say it's the best book ever written on how to learn to play the mandolin, but it literally starts out, here's how you buy one. Here's how you set it up, I mean, from like the most basic steps and why you don't have to spend a fortune on a mandolin, because a lot of people think you have to drop, $2,000 to $4,000 just to have a decent mandolin. I've had several mandolins, some very expensive, some antiques, some really nice instruments. I'm actually playing my sole instrument that I'm playing now in terms of mandolin. I have guitars and violins and banjos and all kinds of stuff. But my mandolin that's my day-to-day, my go-to, I paid $75 for. Now, it's worth a lot more than that. It actually retails for around $800, but I personally paid $75 for it with free shipping. And I'm going to kind of give you, to start with, the criteria of how to choose a mandolin that's not going to break the bank so you can actually get into this instrument. Okay? Then we're going to talk about how to set it up, which means, positioning the bridge and evening the frets and how to tune it. And then we're going to get into the real rudiments, the basics of what makes music, what makes those notes, those random notes, fall into patterns that are recognizable to the ear. I'm going to teach people how to read music, how to sight read, so you can actually pick up a piece of music and play along as you're reading it. That just takes a little practice, actually. But how to improvise, and that's the main thing. I don't want to teach you how to play like Bill Monroe or Jesse McReynolds, or I can go down Tiny Moore, the great Tiny Moore from Bob Wills' band, or Jethro Burns, one of my all-time favorites, or Dave Grisman. When I was a kid, I got to hang out around Dave Grisman a lot. Sam Bush, huge influences on me, honestly, in music terms. But I'm not going to teach you how to play like them. I'm going to give you like the tools so you can play like you. And see, that's what those all the like 90%, 99%, honestly, of music instruction for the mandolin teaches you to play like someone else, teaches you to play their solos, teaches you how to get their sound. I'm not doing that. I'm going to give you these tools so you can play in any genre, you can play in any key, and you can play the music in your head. And I'm actually going to teach you to improvise. The mandolin is actually an excellent instrument for rock and roll, for blues, for R&B, for soul music. I mean, reggae. You can play some awesome reggae on a mandolin. It has a percussive quality. You can really get that offbeat. Probably Sam Bush, or there was a band called Leftover Salmon. They would get into that a little bit. Very few people ever venture down that path. So I'm excited about this. And the book will be out probably in 6 months. But as I'm writing each chapter, beginning next week, because I'm actually having a little trouble with my laptop and my cell phone trying to record good video with good clean sound, so the picture and the sound are both good. I'm trying different microphones. I hope I don't have to buy any more expensive equipment. But hopefully starting this first full week of January, I'm going to start posting videos for each chapter in the book, a lesson essentially for each subchapter, and you can start learning for free, 100% absolutely free, how to play mandolin. And like I said, we're going to start with how to buy it, then how to set it up, and then we're going to start learning scales, and then we're going to start learning chords and arpeggios and modes and how to improvise around a tune and different rhythms. And, it's going to be really in depth. I think it's going to be like, how I wrote the encyclopedia of bitter medicinal herbs, and it's like 700 pages or something, and it's like the most in-depth book ever written on the subject. I'm going to try to keep the mandolin book a lot shorter. It's still probably going to be the most in-depth book on the subject, and you know how I do things. It's like beginner level. You can walk right in and start, but there's also right there for the intermediate or advanced player. So I'm going to go ahead and give you I'm going to do another Substack newsletter. That's the easiest way to do newsletters and websites, by the way. A Substack newsletter is almost like a free website. I kind of love Substack, actually. It's mandolindemystified.substack.com. I got nothing on there right now. It's a blank page. But you can go ahead and sign it up. So next week when I put out the first video and the first newsletter, and there'll be probably some text, well, probably not the first lesson, but eventually there'll be some text that goes along with it. But it'll be a video and it'll be a newsletter. And it's free. So you can actually start learning to play mandolin or tenor banjo. Actually, the two are interchangeable instruments. They're the tenor banjo is just usually tuned a fifth lower, but if it's an Irish tenor banjo, it's going to be the same as a mandolin. So don't, whether you play one of those instruments or not, you can actually start learning for free. And I mean, I'm excited about it because it's a new project for me, and I always get excited about new projects, as you all know. Now let's get into the plants. And, every now and then I will get an email or a nasty comment and they say, why don't you just give the information? I don't have time to listen to you ramble or listen to you play guitar. I'm like, yeah, that's cool. Go somewhere else. Whatever. This is my show, and this is how I do it. And if you've been a listener for a few years, I gotta assume you enjoy it. Now, you might want me to get to the point a little quicker, but you know what you can always do on your podcast player? Skip forward a little bit. Just run it forward. If I'm rambling about a topic that you're not interested in, just skip forward. It's not that hard. It takes a lot less time to do that than to send me a nasty note. Yeah. All right, so now let's talk about, if they had just put me in charge of everything, the world would be such a better place. I mean, wouldn't y'all agree? I mean, if I was like, the dictator of the world, everybody would get along just fine and everybody'd be happy and, we'd have a lot of good food and music and probably be a lot healthier and happier and all that good stuff. How would I solve everybody's problems? Just say, but so many people spend so much time focused on interpersonal relationships, um, arguments or potential arguments in their head with someone else. And I just say, get over it. I want you to do one thing. Look up an old Bob Newhart sketch. And it was, I can't remember the show he did it on. It was Mad TV maybe. So it's probably from like the 90s. And he plays his psychologist character. And that's the message. Get over it. You know, the woman comes in and I had such a bad childhood, and I can't stop thinking about. He says, stop it. Well, I can't stop thinking about. He says, stop it. I mean, that is literally stop it. It may even be the name of the sketch. Stop it. It's hilarious. And he says, do you have any phobias? She says, yeah, I have a fear of being buried alive. And she goes on, and she starts talking about another one of her psychological issues. He says, stop it, or I'll bury you alive. I mean, it really is funny. And then, of course, he was a little obsessive, and she says, I also obsessively wash my hands. He said, well, there's no problem with that. No. It's really funny. Bob Newhart's one of my all-time favorite comedians. Look that up. It's going to be the funniest thing you see all day. And whenever, especially you're interacting with someone who just keeps running over the same piece of ground over and over, obsessing about something, especially if it's something for the past that you can't change. I mean, I've had a lot of trauma in my past. I can't change it. What actually is the best message? Stop it. Stop thinking about it. Find something positive to think about. You cannot go back and change anything in the past. You can talk about it until you're blue in the face. All you're doing is hurting yourself. Yeah, a lot of things hurt real bad, and you do have to think them through and address them, but then lay them down. Lay them down. Whenever that thought comes into your mind that's going to upset you and it's going to send you in a downward spiral, stop it. Think about something else. Find some good music to listen to. Listen to my podcast. Read a book. Play an instrument. Stop it. There is not a single thing you can do today. There's not psychological counseling. There's not medication. There's not even prayer. There's nothing you can do is going to change one thing that happened in the past. So stop thinking about it. In fact, the Bible says, he who puts his hand to the plow and continues to look backward is not fit for the kingdom of heaven. I'm telling you, whether you believe if you're a Christian or not, thinking about the past, unless you're going to try to learn a lesson from the past of I made a mistake and I need to figure out how to change my life so this doesn't happen again. Or if you think back and think, my dad wasn't really a good father in this regard. I'm going to do this differently to be a better father. That's constructive. That's totally constructive. But thinking about the past, of all the past hurts and trauma that's just going to upset you, or thinking about a person that was in your life who hurt you, there's nothing good that's going to come from that. It's actually about the most destructive, negative thing you can do. So stop it. All right, now let's talk about plants. Okay, so the leaves of plantain are really edible year-round, but they're most tender in the spring. And this tasty wild edible is very nutritious and useful medicinally. Like dandelion, our ancestors brought it here to be used as food and medicine. But we've fallen so in love with the grass lawn that it's now considered a weed, which is ridiculous. The tender raw leaves are an excellent addition to a spring salad. You can just eat them raw. As a cooked green, plantain may be prepared in any way you cook spinach, and you can cook it more throughout the year. You don't have to worry about it being so tender. The leaves can be ground into... The seeds can be ground into a flour, but remember that the fiber from the seed, especially the husk of the seed, is the popular laxative psyllium. That's actually where we get psyllium from, is plantain seeds. Plantain leaves make a nice tea if you're into green tea. I'm not. I don't drink non-caffeinated herbal teas. It's just not my thing. Maybe mint every now and then, chamomile, but I actually drink hot beverages for the caffeine, so it's not my thing. But an excellent way to use the sauce I described in last week's show for pepper grass would be to marinate a nice pork loin in it, overnight and grill it. That I described it in last week's show. I won't go back through it. But anyway, slice the pork and serve it over cooked plantain leaves and drizzle the sauce over the meat and the greens. It's if it's spring and the leaves are still very tender, I might do the same things, but just leave the leaves raw and maybe throw in some fresh mint and just have a nice, maybe a sliced boiled egg and a little ramps or green onion, wild onion. That's fantastic. A little salt and pepper. Just make a salad, a little vinaigrette. Of course, you got vinegar in the sauce, so don't worry about the vinaigrette. Just make a salad. Put your sliced pork. Maybe garnish it with the egg and a little, green onion over it, real pretty, and then pour the sauce over. It's just going to be fantastic. Plantain leaves are really mild. They just don't have a lot of flavor. They're not like a mustard or dock or anything sorrel. They're just super mild. So you can throw them in with anything. It's a good beginner food. They're not bitter like dandelions. So this is one you could feed to your friends and family that aren't into wild foods. But as far as medicinal, plants for future states, common plantain is a safe and effective treatment for bleeding. It quickly staunches blood flow and encourages the repair of damaged tissue. Yes, plantain leaves, especially the broadleaf plantain. The leaf's almost like an ace of spades off a deck of playing cards, or as popularized by one of my favorite bands of all time, Motorhead. Yes, I have odd tastes. I'm a huge Lemmy Kilmister fan. The dude played the bass like nobody else. And great band. Anyway, certainly not everyone's taste. But that large leaf plantain looks sort of like the ace of spades. It's a big heart-shaped leaf. It's wonderful to put on cuts. You can put it on just like a Band-Aid. You can put it on a bee sting. If I don't have tobacco, or even if I do, I might take a pinch of tobacco, chew it just a little bit, put it on a bee sting or a wasp sting or hornets, whatever, and then put a lick of plantain leaf and put it over. It'll stick right in place, and it's like you've never been stung. It just the inflammation goes down, it goes away. But plantain it's a styptic plant, and you can use the broadleaf or the narrowleaf for this, and it can help stop bleeding. And it also does promote healing. It's not quite as good as comfrey for that purpose, but it's a lot better than nothing, and it's really very good. The leaves are astringent, demulcent, that means softening, deobstruent, which means they can move obstructions. For that reason, you might often see it included in remedies, usually formulas for kidney and bladder stones. I believe Dr. Patrick Jones, yes, he does, includes plantain in his kidney and bladder stone remedies, for which he's rather well known. Actually, it's depurative, diuretic, expectorant, hemostatic, and refrigerant. I think we've been through all those words many times. Internally, they are used in the treatment of a wide range of complaints, including diarrhea, gastritis, peptic ulcers, irritable bowel syndrome, hemorrhage, hemorrhoids, cystitis, bronchitis, catarrh, sinusitis, asthma, and hay fever. Really useful plant. Obviously. They're used externally in treatment for skin inflammations, malignant ulcers, cuts, and stings. The heated leaves are used as a wet dressing for wounds, swellings, etc. The root is also a remedy for the bite of rattlesnake. I've never tried it that way. I hope I never have to. It's used in equal portions with Marobium vulgare. The seeds are used in treatment of parasitic worms. Plantain seed contains up to 30% mucilage, which swells in the gut, acting as a bulk laxative and soothes irritated membranes. Sometimes the seed husks are used without the seeds, usually the case in like psyllium over-the-counter remedies. Or distilled water made for the plants is an excellent eye lotion. So you can see plantain, super useful. Absolutely one of the very first medicinal herbs you need to learn to identify, as well as being one of the very first edible plants you need to identify. Where I live, I could walk out any spring day and harvest a big bowl full of plantain leaves. And that's going to make about 2 servings when they cook down. So, it's good that it's abundant. Like with most greens, they really do cook down quickly. Now, we'll talk about Asmina parviflora. That's dwarf pawpaw. And like I said, it's a smaller shrub version of the pawpaw tree. And pawpaw is a uniquely native plant. And honestly, I'd love to tell you that there are all these impressive medicinal properties of pawpaw, but while it does have some, its main value is the fruit. It's a great edible fruit. Uh, it's even the full-grown version is a small tree. It never grows very large. The fruit has a mildly tropical flavor, and it's just really good. It likes sort of a mixed forest. It's not one you're going to find in dense timber. You might find it around the edges. It's got to get some sunlight. And like I said, the main reason it's fallen out of favor has to do with market forces. It gets soft quickly. It ripens after being picked. So you're not going to find it in grocery stores, hopefully a roadside stand. But as for medicinal use, the fruit is laxative when eaten in large amounts. Okay, most fruits are. That's probably not surprising, right? But the leaves are diuretic, and they make a good poultice for wounds, boils, infections, and inflammations. And the bark may be used as a digestive bitter. There's also some history of use as a wash in case of head lice. The bark seems to have some what's my word, vermifuge. It has some properties to help get rid of lice as a wash. Now, the seeds are interesting. Miss Grieve said they were emetic. Okay, that means it makes you throw up. I've never eaten pawpaw seeds. I don't like to throw up. I'm kind of like Jerry Seinfeld in that regard. I almost count the days I've gone between throwing up in hopes I never have to do it again. Now, as you know, in early American herbal medicine, especially through the Thompsonians, they were really big on throwing up. That was like their go-to. The first thing, if you sprain your ankle, they'd probably induce vomiting. I mean, they were crazy about throwing up for some reason. But she said it's emetic, for which a saturated tincture of bruised seeds is employed, a dose of 10 to 60 drops, which is a rather large dose. The bark is a bitter tonic and is said to contain a powerful acid. The leaves are used as an application to boils and warts. Pawpaw trees, as I mentioned, can be purchased from many nurseries and very popular among permaculture folks. And so check any nursery like One Green World and such that caters to permaculture folks. I'd love to see pawpaw and persimmon and passion fruit make a huge comeback. They're really some of my favorite fruits. They become very rare because they're just not commercially grown anymore. But of course, pawpaw was probably the most popular of those three. And Resources of the Southern Fields and Forests, written in the 1860s, states that it grows in rich soils along streams. Now, it's not always true in the mountains where I live because it doesn't need a stream. We get 270 days plus of precipitation, so it can be pretty much anywhere where it's going to get enough sun. But he had the botanist, who was a French botanist hired by the Confederacy, found it growing in South Carolina, along the Savannah River, from North Carolina to Florida, etc. So it was pretty common at that time. Far less common since people started clearing forests and planting a stand of pine to take to market or real estate and such. That's really why we've lost most of our familiarity with pawpaw and persimmon and such, is because we've just been clearing a lot of the native wild stands of trees and replacing them with either landscaping or timber. And that's another good reason why we need to start growing these again, is so we do get that diversity of plant life. Because the more diversity we have, the healthier we are, the healthier environments are, the more wildlife benefits, and that's not a bad thing at all. But anyway, he said juice of unripe fruit is a powerful and efficient vermifuge. Remember, we talked about that for lice and such, but he's actually also talking for intestinal worms. This is from the unripe fruit. He said the powder of the seed answers the same purpose as a principal constituent of the juice is fibrin, a product supposed peculiar to animal substances and to fungi. In other words, it was toxic to worms and head lice, and it could help with certain fungal infections. The tree has, moreover, the property of rendering the toughest animal substances tender by causing a separation of the muscular fiber. Its very vapor does this, as newly killed meat suspended over the leaves, and even old hogs and poultry, when fed on the fruit, become tender in a few hours. Now, this is where I have to give a caveat. That is true of papaya. It has a chemical constituent in it, papain, I believe is what it's called, papain, something like that, Papain, if memory serves. That is a meat tenderizer. Now, that's papaya. Papaya has that property. I am not sure that Pawpaw possesses the same characteristic. Now, I'm not sure because I've never used Pawpaw in that way. I really don't. I don't. I'm not sure outside of a commercial kitchen I've ever used a meat tenderizer. Pineapple juice is a good one, but Pawpaw is fantastic. And I've rarely used it in a commercial kitchen, honestly. So I can't swear to it. If give it a try. If you find some pawpaws, see if making kind of mashing them into a paste and putting them over a tough piece of meat tenderizes it. The few times I have used papain, again, I believe that's how you pronounce it. The few times I have used papaya extract, it gave the meat a mushy texture, and I didn't like it. So that's why I have never used it. So while I think he may be confusing the two plants, because that happened a lot about that time, I can't say for sure. But, if you need a meat tenderizer, I suppose it's worth a try. But anyway, he notes that Michaud, the great botanist Michaud, who did so much of his work like literally in my backyard, notices that the cellular integument of the bark, and particularly the roots, exhales in summer a nauseous odor so strong as to occasion sickness. I've never noticed that either. I have been in the woods many times in summer, and I've found many pawpaw trees, and I have never been sickened by their odor. Who knows? Maybe Michaud was particularly sensitive. Andre Michaud was a great botanist and literally did so much research on botany in early America in my backyard. I can walk out my back door and walk all the way up to Grandfather Mountain, and I'm right there where Andre Michaud was 250 years ago. So it's pretty cool. Pretty cool, actually. King's American Dispensatory of 1898 says that it is emetic, for which purpose a saturated tincture of the bruised seeds is employed from doses of 10 to 60 drops. Sounds a little familiar, doesn't it? That's one thing. I love Plants for a Future. They don't always cite their references. I often found that they've just copied and pasted. And that's true with a lot of herbal books. You may notice I am extremely careful in citing my sources. I am absolutely meticulous about it, because I don't want to pretend like I'm some guru who knows everything. I actually think my information on herbal medicine is far more convincing because I cite my sources and I go back to old works from different cultures in different countries and show how different peoples have found the same uses for the same plants or similar plants. But anyway, he says the bark is said to be bitter tonic and has been used much in domestic practice. The medicinal properties of this agent have not been fully investigated. So by about 1900, still hadn't been fully investigated. And what are the odds that it was investigated much at all after 1900, when about 1920 the pharmaceutical synthetic industry began to take over? Probably not much. So Peterson Field Guide to Eastern and Medicinal Plants tells us the fruit is edible and delicious, which I totally agree. Like I said, it is somewhere between a papaya and a banana. It's really good. It's also laxative. Leaves are insecticidal. So the leaves are they said use the bark, they said use the seeds. Peterson Field Guide, which is the most, I won't say it's the most modern source I have on Pawpaw, but one of the more modern and one of the best, says the leaves are insecticidal and also diuretic, applied to abscesses. Seeds are emetic, narcotic, and producing stupor. So let's put that as a warning. If the seeds make you throw up and are narcotic and produce a stupor, there's a chance you could pass out and drown in your own vomit. So maybe we don't want to use it that way. The powdered seeds, formerly applied to the heads of children to control lice, have insecticidal properties. Warning, the seeds are toxic and leaves may cause a rash. I've handled the leaves, they don't on me, so that's probably a matter of like contact dermatitis for certain people. Any way you look at it, y'all. Pawpaw is delicious. It is useful. It is absolutely a plant you need to get growing on your property if you possibly can. Um, Ditto plantain. I mean, obviously, plantain grows just about everywhere. But if you grow in the garden, the leaves will get bigger and more tender, and you can enjoy it longer in the season, and you may even get a fall crop. Where I live, the frost comes in, and that's pretty much it by the end of the year. But who knows what happens if you were to grow it. Whether I wouldn't say a greenhouse, it's too hardy for a greenhouse, but you could probably, do some deep mulch and maybe a cold frame or a close, or just protect it from wind and see what happens. I have no idea. By October around here, we get the first heavy, hard killing frost, and by now it's 20 degrees with snow and all that fun stuff. So I have no idea what plantain may do in the winter. I know it mostly is a spring and summer herb, but the seeds, they're easily collected. Like I said, they're one of the most popular laxatives. There's no reason you couldn't do microgreens with plantain all winter in your house. Just do a container and a grow light, or sit them in a sunny window, or grow them as sprouts. Wonderfully nutritious, wonderful plant. So y'all, I think we'll wrap it up there. I hope you're enjoying this bitterly, bitterly cold January weather. And tomorrow, of course, is January 6th. And that's going to be a very special day, and I am counting the days until January 20, and very, very excited for this year and the next 4 years and what may happen. Obviously, we've had 2 terrorist attacks apparently in the last few days. Be careful. Keep your eyes open. Were it me, I would avoid public gatherings. I'm not much of a public gathering person in the first place. I always said, if I can't be on stage playing the music, I don't want to be in the audience, because I just don't enjoy it that much. I love live music. I'm just not a get in the crowd kind of person, so I don't go to parades and I don't go to football games and all that. If you do, be very careful and keep your eyes open. I'm not sure if a vehicle plows in or somebody sets off a bomb. You're probably not going to react fast enough or have the opportunity to get out of the way. But alertness could save your life or those of your family. You can always, if you can't get yourself out of the way, you can push someone else out of the way. You can actually do that a lot faster than moving yourself. So, learn to be aware and of your surroundings and keep your eyes open. But honestly, I would avoid public gatherings for the next little bit. One, I'm not going to the inauguration because it's bitterly cold and there's a snowstorm. Two, someone asked if I was going, and I said absolutely not. 4 years ago, I thought it was a setup. I thought, something bad is going to happen, and it's a setup, and I don't want to be in that crowd. Thank God I wasn't. People who were just basically innocent people standing around have been sentenced to long jail sentences just for showing up, just not doing a single thing to break the law. They were just there. I thought that was a setup. Were it not for the blizzard, I would be very afraid of a terrorist attack during the inauguration on the 20th. Just my opinion. I would avoid it. Even though I'd love to be there and see that historic event, I would absolutely avoid it. I avoid Washington, D.C. In general. I used to work in politics. I was in and out of D.C. all the time. It's never a nice place to be anytime. Well, okay, except when the cherry blossoms are blooming. It's very pretty. Yes, that's true. It's spring, but in the summers it's blazing hot, and the winters it's bitterly cold. Traffic and crime are always just horrible. But yeah, I would probably for the next couple of weeks, next month, avoid large public gatherings and keep my eyes open. I'm not trying to freak you out, but we've already had 2 terrorist attacks in the past, 5 days. So. And apparently another one that may have been foiled. So I'm just saying, be careful, and let's just all pray for safety. And whether you're a Trump supporter or not, let's pray for our country and safety for our president and all our elected officials. Even the ones you don't like, pray for their safety and well-being, and maybe that they'll come around to the right side of thinking. That's always a good thing to do. But just be careful. You know, looking at the world right now, there's a lot going on. There's an awful lot going on, and it's a very dangerous place we're being left with from the Biden administration. The Biden administration has left the world a far more dangerous place than it found it. And, just be careful. That's all I'm saying. Be careful. Anyway, y'all, have a good one, and I'll talk to you next time.
The information in this podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat any disease or condition. Nothing I say or write has been evaluated or approved by the FDA. I'm not a doctor. The U.S. government does not recognize the practice of herbal medicine, and there is no governing body regulating herbalists. Therefore, I'm really just a guy who studies herbs. I'm not offering any advice. I won't even claim that anything I write or say is accurate or true. I can tell you what herbs have been traditionally used for. I can tell you my own experience and if I believe an herb has helped me. I cannot nor would I tell you to do the same. If you use an herb anyone recommends, you are treating yourself. You take full responsibility for your health. Humans are individuals and no two are identical. What works for me may not work for you. You may have an allergy, a sensitivity, an underlying condition that no one else even shares and you don't even know about. Be careful with your health. By continuing to listen to my podcast or read my blog, you agree to be responsible for yourself, do your own research, make your own choices, and not to blame me for anything ever.